you guys want to just sign in back there, that would be great. Grab all the papers, that would be wonderful. We good to go?
Good to go.
All right. So welcome, guys. This is about the fourth or fifth time I've actually helped Henry Wise with plan their trip, and it's always exciting to see the group out. So thank you, guys. A couple things. I'll try and keep this under an hour. I know everyone's time is valuable, and but if you have any questions at any time, please ask as we go along. So the good news is that you guys are going to be going on a fantastic trip in 2018. Last time they were in Italy, your vice principal, I think that was, your AP, just came by. He was ecstatic about what you guys were up to, had a marvelous time, and this will be no different. Spain is absolutely incredible. With my own classes and my own groups, I've been there 4 times myself, and out of everywhere we go in Europe, it probably has the best hotels and the best food that you're going to get. My group's actually heading back there. We're going to be fighting for airline space at the same time, so here we go. So the trip you guys are doing is called Adventure in Spain. A couple things. We're just going to go through this stuff right here. We always have to do the legal stuff up front, okay? Obviously where you're visiting, where you're heading, all the different itinerary that you're going to hit, health concerns, tip money, that sort of stuff. And then the bad news is there's always a cost to these things. And we leave that very special nugget for the end. But again, if you have any questions, please ask as we go along. So here we go. The trip is being taken with the consent of Henry Wise High School upon approval from the Calgary Board of Education. They usually give it how long in advance?
2-3 months.
Yeah. They like to see sort of the conditions. Right now, the only conditions on CB schools, and I work with a lot of them, is that they're not allowed to go to France or Belgium, for obvious reasons. One of the reasons I chose to go to, I'm doing Portugal and Spain with my group in Strathmore, and the reason I chose that trip, just like I chose my other trip before, was it's out of the way. The only major city that my kids and really you guys are really going to hit, particularly, is pretty much Barcelona, and that's only for the tail end kind of thing. And so that's one of the reasons I chose that trip, and I was glad to see Steve chose this trip for the same sorts of reasons. So. Always have to mention this. You know, there's always risks involved in international travel. They're going to be near beaches, cliffs near water. There's slippery surfaces. The specter of terrorism is out there. The good news is this. If anybody knew what happened in Nice this past year, so my group was actually on the promenade, not that day. We were on there at Easter time. But understand the reason why they attacked on July 14th. It's their national holiday. That person knew that promenade was going to be packed with 250,000 people. That's why they did it then. When we travel, there's nobody around. It's low season in Europe. And the places we are going and you are going are quite remote for the most part. And again, that's why I chose those sorts of trips. I'm glad Steve did again. Okay? So, you're looking at right inside Barcelona. This has been under construction for well over 100 years. It's called Sagrada Familia. There's going to be 21 towers. It used to be cool. You used to be able to go up into the spires completely to the top. Now they sort of cut you off about halfway. But it's still kind of a neat thing to do if you are in Barcelona and have a bit of time. All right, so here we go. Here's what's included in your trip. So it's an 11-day tour for you guys. Obviously, round-trip airfare. They use scheduled carriers. So you're either going to be flying Air Canada, Lufthansa, British Airways, something like that. You won't be flying sort of charter airlines ever. Okay? Then, 9 overnight stays in hotels with private bathrooms. If you've been to Europe, that's actually kind of a big deal. Okay? Sometimes you see bathrooms down the hall. That's not the case here. All the kids will get private bathrooms in their rooms. You get European breakfasts and dinners daily. Now, again, this is where Spain, I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised if you've ever traveled Europe before. When we went, the meals were the best, honestly, that I've ever seen out of any European country. And I'm not sure that it wasn't because we were special or anything else. It's just that's sort of what is done. And so they say European breakfast, and usually that means not a great meal. Honestly, our kids were stuffed each time they've gone. And so, I used to have kids carry granola bars with them in their backpacks, and didn't need it because it was that great. Okay, and dinner. So you get breakfast and dinner daily. What you don't get is lunches, and that's because you guys will be on the road somewhere. And they'll very simply say, "We've got an hour and a quarter here. Here's 4 or 5 places you can go. We have rules for how kids can go together. We always have the rule of 3, which is no matter what, you always are traveling in groups of 3. Can anyone tell me why? Let me ask the kids, why do you think you have to travel in groups of 3? Why not 2? What do you think? Yeah, so sorry, what's your name? Sarah? So if Sarah gets injured somewhere, she rolls off an ankle or something like that on a street corner or something, and what's your name over here? Yeah. Katie? And Katie and her are by themselves. Katie has a choice. She can either stay with Sarah, which is good, but then nobody knows Sarah's problem, or she can come back to Mr. Yanover and say, this is what happened, Sarah. Okay? That's why we always travel in 3. So one person would stay with Katie or Sarah, and one person would actually come back. Katie might come back to Mr. Yanover. So nowhere at any time the kids ever go in anything less than a group of 3, ever. Okay? And the reason is, obviously, aside from small incidents like that, if there is something major that goes on, we need to be able to find you right now and get you out of it. Does that make sense? Okay. And a good example of that is, years ago, there was an attack in Spain. EF had 3,500 kids on the ground in Spain, because EF takes 30,000 kids out of Canada every year, 300,000 out of the States. Okay, they're massive. That's the company that CB and I work with, and I work for tonight. Now, in an hour and a half, every single kid, all 3,500, had been located, their parents had been contacted, and they had been moved out of the city. An hour and a half, 3,500 kids. So we need to know exactly where our kids are at all times. Okay? So please make sure, and we'll talk about it at future meetings. This isn't a one-time shot for me, by the way. I stick with your group right up until you leave. Okay? And then I'll be fighting for your seat. So there at that point. Okay? So you get a full-time bilingual tour director that is on your bus. They stay in your hotels. The bus driver stays in your hotels. They meet you at the airport. You will see them off at the airport when you return. Okay? You get some sightseeing tours led by licensed local guides. In some cases, it's sort of like protectionism. They're not, the EF guide, they're not even allowed sometimes to tour in certain areas. The local cities make you use their guides. But the good news is they know it inside out and backwards. So you get the best guides in those places. Okay? And then you get all of these entrances into all of these different attractions. Okay? And I won't even go into them. You can sort of read for yourself, take a bit of time for yourself. Again, this is a customized tour, too. I didn't mention that at the start, but it is. It's not the typical package tour that EF does. CBE and Mr. Yanover customize it. So you guys get to do some unique things that aren't on any other tours. You get to do some experiential travel, okay? And so you can sort of see things like chocolate museum and tasting, a cooking class. Normally that's not part of the itinerary, okay? But it's been built in for you guys, okay? So it's really rather interesting, obviously. All right, so now let's take a look at it. So this is you guys. I guarantee you your flight is not this quick. So my guess is you're going to take off from Calgary. Now it's going to go one of 2 ways. You're either going to go nonstop to either London or Frankfurt. Really, those are your options out of Calgary. Okay? Amsterdam, I guess, with KLM you now could go. And then you'll head down from that point to start your tour in Spain. Okay? Now there is another way. You might be able to go through Toronto as well. Okay? We try to not make that happen as much as possible. Okay? But you also have to understand that you guys are leaving at prime time. Every single group in Alberta and Western Canada is trying to get out of town on the same 2 weekends, whether you have a spring break or an Easter break like I do. And so it's limited flight space. So the good news for you is this gentleman plans ahead, which is why this trip is in 2018. So once he has numbers, he can tell EF, listen, we've got our group, we're ready to go. And they'll start allocating space about 355 days ahead of time. And you guys will be like getting first dibs. That's good. That's also why I plan my trips 2 years in advance, but most people don't. Okay? So that's the routing. Okay? Then once there, you can see the bus, but it's not a little yellow bus, school bus like that. Okay? You guys are traveling on coach buses. These things are absolutely immaculate. I'm going to ask the kids that they take very, very good care of them. Okay? Because they are that nice. Okay? And so this sort of, you're going to start out probably in Malaga or somewhere around there, head up to Cordoba, Granada, to Toledo, which is right near Madrid. You hit Madrid for a little while, okay? And by the way, my biggest fear on these trips, honestly, is not terrorism. It's not. It's pickpockets. Madrid is notorious. 2 times ago when we were in Madrid, our first train, and I take like 130 people, okay? Our first train, on the first train, we had 4 separate pickpocket attempts. 4. One guy actually pulled the emergency cord to make the train lurch, and he was reaching into people's backpacks. Okay? Don't be afraid of the people sitting in the middle of the car. Be afraid of the people who get on right at the very end. Right? Because they got to get out. If they're stealing your stuff, they got to get out. So we're going to go through all that safety stuff, how to carry your stuff, how not to get pickpocketed or limit the chances as much as possible at our last meeting. Because if I tell the kids now and your trip's 538 days away, it means nothing. I want to tell you within a week of you leaving, here's how you protect yourself, and hopefully it'll stick. Okay? So, on from there to Zaragoza, okay? And then finally, you head up to Barcelona. Okay? And then you guys will fly out of Barca. All right? Now, take a look at some of these places. The Alhambra is absolutely amazing. And why Spain is one of the best countries to visit? Does anyone know the three cultures that sort of took it over at varying times in history? Who would they be? The Moors, I heard, which were from Africa. Nice job. Who else? Sorry? Christians, the Catholics, and Jews. Those are the three groups. Now, when you go to the Alhambra, look really close around there, because what you'll see is, and it depends on who was ruling when, but quite literally you'll see a mosque, a Moorish Arabic mosque, and when all of a sudden the Catholics take over, then they put a church on that thing, okay? And then the Jews take over and they put a synagogue on it. And when you look at the architecture in here, you'll be walking around and all of a sudden you'll see things don't appear right. They look different. They don't look like the rest of the building. You're kind of going, what is that? Well, actually, that was the Moorish part before they got taken over by the Catholics. Okay? So it's this fascinating web of interrelated religions as you go through Spain. And to be honest, the first time I went there, it absolutely floored me. And it was everywhere. And you didn't really, I just sort of thought of Spain as a Catholic country. Yeah, at one time, but not all time. Okay? So this building is absolutely magnificent that you're going to go visit. That's in Granada. Okay? Don Quixote, if you've ever heard of that tale. Okay? You get to go past some of the windmills. Okay? Consuegra. Toledo, the gentleman in the crowd, if you're thinking about going on this trip. It's a UNESCO site, kind of like Banff National Park is a UNESCO site, or Bay of Fundy. But what's really cool, I find, is it's like you go across a bridge and you get into the town, there's no cars or anything like that. But what also is cool, and it's this medieval city, is for the guys especially, maybe I'm stereotyping, but they have a sword factory they take you to. And one of the times my group was there, they were buying swords like crazy, and then shipping them back to Canada. Okay? And they still have them today. And they're absolutely magnificent. Toledo swordsmen are known throughout the world. Okay? And then, of course, you get to see things like the National Museum, Guernica, which is a thing from World War II, you know, the massacre at Guernica, with Nazi bombers, etc., etc. Okay? This is Toledo. Then on to Madrid itself. Okay? The Prado Museum, the Royal Palace is amazing. Over 2,000 rooms, and they're all different. So one will be, you know, I'm looking at some of the stuff around your school. One will be like all roses and flowers, and the next one's like jungle. I'm not sure who decorated this place, okay? But it's absolutely eclectic, okay? Again, be aware of pickpockets, especially in, you know, squares and things like that, especially Madrid. I found Madrid worse than Barcelona, okay, for what it's worth, okay? Zaragoza, you get to see basilicas like this, like massive, incredible works of art, churches from like the 1100s, okay? Then Barcelona itself, I showed you Sagrada Familia. Las Ramblas is like the shopping area in Barcelona, okay? And again, kids, when you go to Barcelona or you go to Spain, please don't, you know, when you go there, you'll see stores like The Gap and whatever else. Don't go to The Gap. Go get something local. Go get something unique that you can't buy here in Calgary at Chinook Mall, okay? That's Las Ramblas. Park Güell is this amazing architecture. You're going to see like a 100-foot lizard made out of mosaic tile, okay? Again, does anybody know the guy who invented all this stuff? Like, who was in charge of that? Who was in charge of Park Güell? It's the same artist. Starts with a G. Antonio Gaudí, yeah. And he is everywhere in Spain, but especially in Barcelona. Okay? And again, if you can, I took my kids even to see some of the 1992 Olympic sites as well, because they hosted that year. Kind of cool. Okay? But Barcelona, you guys can hang out at the beach for a while. I'm going to give you a recommendation for a restaurant that I went to the last time. Right on the beach, they served paella like nobody's business. It was 20 euros that we had this special lunch that we paid extra for. Unreal. Beautiful stuff right on the beach. Okay? It was terrific. Okay? And we're going back, by the way, it's there, so we might see you in the restaurant. Okay? It's not an EF restaurant. We do things separate. Okay? And you definitely want to go to this place. And it's right there on the beach. Kids can play in the sand. They can check it out. Go along the boardwalk. So much fun. Okay? Now, Some tour rules in general, though. This is group travel, right? So that means that attendance and everything is mandatory. Okay, you don't get to sort of, it's not on your schedule, it's on the group schedule. And what I tell my kids as far as attendance and being on time for things is that you get to do more if you're on time. Because understand, all those entrances way back here, all those entrances right there, okay, a lot of them are timed entrances, which means you have a 1 o'clock timing to enter the Prado Museum, which means that we need you out by 3 because we're going to take you to this right after that and this right after that. If you're late and it costs your group that entrance time, you've messed up the whole day. Okay? So it's so crucially important that you're on time. Why? Very simply because then you get to do more. Okay? And my goal here, and Mr. Yanover's goal, is to have you guys have the best experience of your lives. I don't want you to sleep on the trip. Okay? You can do that when you're at home afterwards. Okay? What I want you to do is enjoy the trip and get the most out of the trip. Okay? Let me just flip forward through this. Okay? So now, obviously smoking alcohol, again, separate issues, but these would be school rules that would apply here, okay? As well as drug possession, I don't need to mention that one. Phone calls. Once again, I don't know, the school will have a policy on cell phones that we'll talk about later at another meeting, okay? But for the most part, you know, internet cafes. So one of the things we always do when we find our hotels is we look, is there a grocery store nearby that you can get cheap food? Okay? Is there an internet cafe close by? Because, and again, that's workable in English is a big thing too, because some of those keyboards, I spent hours on, still can't figure them out. Where's that symbol? Don't know how that works. Okay? And you don't think of those things, but it's true. Most of the hotels you're going to stay in have Wi-Fi capabilities in the lobby. It's spotty, usually. Okay? We take it for granted here that there's Wi-Fi virtually everywhere. There's Shaw, there's whatever else. It's not that way there. Okay? And so they will have Wi-Fi in the hotel lobbies if you have your phone with you or whatever. Don't count on it being able to stream anything or anything else. Okay? It's not usually that great. Okay? But, and so phone calls, you know, don't worry about them too much, but you'll be able to connect through, you know, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want to do. I think you actually even keep like a running thing, don't you? Like a log going? Yeah. So again, you know, Mr. Yanover's been doing this for a number of years too, so he has certain ways that he does the trips that work great with getting back in touch with people. Now health though, I need to mention health for a second. These trips are actually pretty demanding, for lack of a better word. Okay? You need to be in decent shape to do them. And that means, and it's not that you can't do them, but if you have any medical conditions, things like that, Mr. Yanover needs to be made aware of them. I had a lady on one of my trips that didn't know it. She was diabetic, which normally is fine, but remember, you're about 8 hours ahead in Europe. So right now it is 7:21 here. In Spain it's going to be about 3 in the morning or something like that. Okay? And so when we're running around Europe, her body was saying, you should be sleeping. And very quickly, her levels just went through the floor. Okay? And she actually went into a bit of a diabetic hole. I didn't know she was diabetic. Okay? So I carry medical staff, and EF is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. They're the largest tour organization in Europe, well, in the world, actually. But quite literally, if there's an issue like that, your tour director who's with you 24/7, there's offices all around Europe as well. Okay? He or she will take that child to the doctor, get them cared for, we'll worry about whatever afterwards. Okay? There's a cost or whatever. Oh, and by the way, it's Europe. So I've had many medical instances, because I've been traveling with kids for about 20 years. I had a kid nearly break his ankle one time in Greece. So the bill for the taxi was 125 euros. The bill for the actual medical procedure was 6 euros. Very left-wing governments, they pay for everything. Okay? You can't spit without hitting a pharmacy. I mean, it's like that here. It just is, especially Western Europe. Okay? And so, but you need to understand that you need to be in decent health to do these trips. Okay? Because, you know, when I'm on my trips, you're up at 7 in the morning, and quite literally there's times where you don't go to bed till 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, depending on the town you're in or whatever you're doing. Okay? It's pretty demanding. Okay? And so, again, and kids, I mean, this is what your first day looks like, guys. So, if you leave, and let's say you fly to Frankfurt, the flight to Frankfurt on Thursday night or whatever leaves at about 6 o'clock-ish. Okay? Let's say you're excited, you might even went to school that day. You're pumped about the trip, so you haven't slept all day. Probably didn't get a great sleep the night before. You're now on the flight for 8.5 hours, okay, to Frankfurt. Might have a couple hour layover, 2, 3, 4 hour layover, and then down to Spain, which is another 2 or 3 hours. And then we don't let you go to bed. We've got to get you on their schedule right away. And so it's like, no, you've got 20 minutes in your room to freshen up, and we're out of here, because we're not here to see your room, we're here to see Spain. And we take you on walking tours and checking things out, and we take you out for dinner. You'll get back to your room around 9 at night. But that means you might have been up for over 40 hours. Okay? And that's day 1 and 2. It's like it's Tuesday, it must be Brussels or something like that. There's a movie about that. Okay? So understand that you need to sort of be a bit prepared for this. Okay? Drink water on the plane. We'll talk about all those things as well at future meetings. All right. School rules, of course. Okay? Everything is it's a school trip, just like if you went on a field trip to the Calgary Zoo. Okay? So if you do something ill-advised, you can expect that there will be punishment meted out one way or the other. Okay? For grade 12s, might even affect graduation status. You have to look at those things. So make good choices. The other thing I'd say about this is this. For many years, and I worked, like I said, with a lot of Calgary schools, Calgary has just started traveling really again in the last few years. Okay? To be honest, ironically, your board's being more progressive than the Catholic board right now, which is strange to me. Okay? But nevertheless, Henry Wisewood now has a bit of a legacy now of traveling. So understand that you're not only traveling for yourself right now, but you're traveling for future kids to have the opportunity. And so if you make bad choices on trips, that puts that in jeopardy. Okay? It makes people say, yeah, it's not really worth my time or anybody else's time. So just remember that when you are on the trip, that you're representing your school and yourself and your family in that order kind of thing, or maybe not in that order, maybe reverse order. Because I know if my kid did something bad on the trip, the school would be the least of their concerns. Okay? So they'd be dealing with me that evening. So, school rules. Next, so health concerns, I talked about that a little bit. Okay? And by the way, and we'll do things like if you take prescriptions, it's not a big deal, but we'll ask you to find the generic name of the prescription, because they'll have it in Europe, but they'll be under a different name. They won't have the same brand names that we use, right? And so we'll just have a sheet of that. So if a kid loses his medication, not a big deal. We'll get some more. It's easy. Okay, it's easy. But it might be a different brand name. Okay? Now, Peace of Mind program. Okay? So what EF does, okay, and they've been doing it for years now, it allows groups to move your trip's travel dates, modify or find a new tour, or receive a voucher. So for example, within 44 days of your trip going, if something untoward happens in Spain and all of a sudden the CB says, not going to Spain, okay? And a formal travel warning says, don't go to Spain right now, we don't recommend it from the Canadian federal government, then this kicks in. And basically what it does, it says, okay, what do you want to do instead? Do you want to go elsewhere, of which the CB would then have to approve? Do you want to delay your trip to a certain other time? Okay? Or do you want to, you can get a voucher for a good chunk of your trip back, that kind of thing. It would be up to you as a group to sort of figure that out. Okay? What I can say is that a few years ago in Egypt, EF had 30, 40 groups in Egypt, and they had something called the Arab Spring go on. Okay? And so Canada said, don't go to Egypt, it's not safe right now. So what EF very simply did is they said, okay, where else do you want to go? If it's less money, we'll give you the refund. If it's more money than what your trip was, we'll give you it and we'll comp you it. In other words, if Egypt was $4,000 and you decided just to do England, and it was $2,800, they gave the kids $1,200 back. Okay? If you said, I want to do Australia now, which is now $5,000, EF said, okay, fine, you do Australia, and they just gave it to you for $4,000 instead of the $5,000. Okay? So CBE has their special rules with this. Okay? You want to jump in here, or is it okay?
There's always Italy.
Yeah, there's always Italy. There we go. Okay? So now, CBE insurance, do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Okay.
That's this USIC travel insurance benefit summary. Now so what's happened is the CBE has taken out group insurance to cover all tours. And so basically it's summarized here. Now what happened, this money isn't due to the CBE until 45 days before we leave. So it'll be collected in the last amount of money that we collect, and it could actually be a different policy in effect at that time. So if you look on here, the concern here would be school board discretion benefit, just kind of down at the bottom, second last line in the box there. And that's if the CBE cancels the trip. And so right now, under this policy, it would give back 50% of prepaid non-refundable trip costs. Now, if we're really close to the trip, the non-refundable cost is pretty much the cost of the trip. So we do one of two things, depending on which insurance is in effect. The year that we go, if they have full coverage there, that's great, and if not, we can look at getting a supplemental policy that would cover the remaining cost. Okay, but that's something that we would discuss and you would have the option of taking. And I've looked into it, and this is $110. The supplemental insurance might be about another $80 or $90. That would cover, say, the other $2,000 of the cost of that happening. I'm hoping what will happen is they'll just go to a different insurer, and this will be full coverage. Right? But that's something we worry about next September, our next school year, the year we're traveling, and not right now. Otherwise, the rest of it's pretty much the same. Medical coverage and all of that. If they need to fly the parent over there, they will. And that's pretty standard in any of the travel insurance policies. If something happens, your kid comes down with mono the week before the trip, they would get back the refund. That's just a full refund covered under the policy. Okay, so that's basically this USIC, the CBE travel insurance. Any questions on that? Okay, and again, it's probably going to be a different policy next year. So, there you go. Onward.
So that's that one. Tip money now. Now your tips go towards your tour directors, your bus drivers, for things like, you're flying into maybe Malaga, and all of a sudden Sarah's bag didn't arrive. So now we've gone to the hotel, but it comes in on a later flight. Well, we have to get her bag. And so I've used tip money before to get a taxi back to the airport at 100 euros or whatever, and to get her bag. Okay? So, but most of it, the vast majority of the tip money goes towards, again, your tour directors, okay, and the bus drivers, okay? And your tour directors, you have to understand, these guys work almost exclusively on tips. And so it's in their best interest to really do a good job for you, because they're trying to impress you, try and get a very healthy tip, okay? And that's good for you, okay? And again, this is one of the reasons I choose EF, and CBE doesn't have any choice, because EF is the only approved carrier, but I choose EF, and one of the reasons I do is tour guides. There's about 1,300 tour guides in Europe. EF has about 1,000 of them. And because we're the biggest company, if I'm a tour guide in Europe and I do another company, if I work for another company, then EF says, no, I don't want you. So you might do one tour over with those guys, but I can do 7 with EF. So if you're trying to feed your family, what do you want to do? Okay? And so one of the reasons I choose, they have some of the best ones, I know lots of them myself, is the tour guides, and they are worth every penny. I call them icebergs, because what you see is a little bit above the surface. What you don't see is what they actually do. And I've had the pleasure of going along with some of them on other trips and watching and basically shadowing what they do. So when you guys are in the Prado Museum, they're making sure your dinner reservations are set. They're making sure that they have all the train tickets to get you there. They're making sure that tomorrow's schedule is working out and everything's all set up. Okay? They're doing all this other legwork that you don't see. And that's why, like I said, I call them icebergs. Okay? If any extra money is due, okay, Mr. Yanover always hands it back to whatever it is. So if it's only 10 euros on the end that he can divvy up for everybody, then everybody gets 10 euros, whatever it is. Okay? But we always like to err on a bit on the side of caution for this, because if something untoward happens, we need to sort of be able to sort of have immediate access to funds to do something. Okay? So I myself charge about that same amount. I charge $125 for my trips, to give you an idea. Okay? For the same reason. Okay? Now, the fee structures, they work a little bit differently. Do you want to speak to them, or do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay.
So fee structure depends on the number of students, total number of students attending. So probably if we have fewer than 25 to 29, we just likely won't go. You can go with 18. That would bump the private group line there. That's 185 a lot higher. And the reason being that with the CBE, you can only travel as a private group. So it's just Henry Wineswood students. We would have our own bus and that. And so we did a trip to London and Paris 2014, I think, our second trip, where we only had 18 students, and that, increased the cost because of that. So with 25 to 29 students, you're basically looking at that private group of 185. All the rest of the fees are pretty much similar on each of these slides. So if we go to the next slide, this will be for 30 to 34 students, and you can see the private group fee has dropped to $75. Okay, and the reason is with 30 to 34, it costs, we have to get a full bus. And if you've got fewer students, you might be able to get a smaller bus, but you still have to pay for the full bus. So the more the merrier. And you see the price drops to $38.90 as compared to $40.75. And if we have 35 plus traveling, let's do the same. So $39.65 with 30 to 34, and $38.90 with 35 plus. And then the private group is free because we have enough students basically to cover off the bus. All the rest of the fees are basically the same on those. So we're looking anywhere from $38.90 to about $4,075, depending on the number of students going. The back to school discount ends October 31st. So anybody signing up, and we'll talk about it, it's putting down $199 before the end of October, gets you that $100 off. If you choose afterwards, and any students that come in next year, that is just basically $100 more than whatever you see on the bottom line for any of those.
So again, what it covers then though is all of your flights, obviously, all of your hotels, all of your busing, all of your transfers between your hotels and buses and all that sort of stuff. It covers your excursions into all those different places that I mentioned, okay? All those entrances, your breakfasts, your suppers. So the only thing not included here really are your lunches, as I mentioned before, your passports, because you have to have obviously a passport to head out, and anything that you want to sort of spend, okay? And right now the euro's at about $1.30, $1.40, somewhere in that range, okay? So for every 100 euros, it would cost you about 140 Canadian. Now, again, you're only allowed to bring back $800 Canadian worth of stuff anyway.
Only.
Okay? Only. Okay? Well, understand this. I've had kids literally bring 4,000 euros with them. And I've seen kids literally spend 4,000 euros. It was actually pretty disgusting, to be quite frank. Okay? And I was ever so glad when they actually got busted at customs on the way home. And got another $500 bill on top of that. I was very happy with that, actually. So, having said that, legally you're only allowed to bring back $800 Canadian worth of stuff. Okay? Yep.
I have one in high school right now, one in grade 9. Can I register grade 9 for next year now?
Yes.
Yep.
So I can still get that.
Yep. Yeah. That would you
Back to
just
school.
fill in 2 of these enrollment forms and basically be paid double each time anything was paid.
Yep.
Enrollment handbook. The enrollment handbook. So basically there's a bunch of blah, blah, blah in it. The important stuff kind of is the inside of the last page, and I've given you a photocopy of that as well, because the inside has the booking conditions, the cancellation policy and that. And the thing is, if you fill in the enrollment form and hand that in, then you no longer have a copy of that. So this way you have a copy. It's basically, it's $199, which is a non-refundable deposit, okay, and that would kick in October 31st. And there's another $920, which is the first kind of payment due. So we'd be looking for $1,119 around October 21st. So we could send the money in. If you change your mind before October 31st, you'd get it all back. Okay, so if you gave us a check, we'd just give you the check back. If you had paid by credit card, we would refund the credit card. So if you cancel before October 31st, you got 10 days kind of buyer's remorse. Don't change mind. No harm, no foul. After October 31st, the $199 is non-refundable. Okay, so you're in for the $199. Until December 31st, if you change your mind, you could get the $920 back. Okay, so we're just going to kind of charge it in one payment due October 21st, but if you do cancel after October 31st, you would lose the $199, you get back the $920.
So again, everything goes through, for Calgary Board Schools, everything goes through the school office. Okay, so nothing goes to EF. And then Henry Wiseman will send a check for the students traveling to EF at that point. Okay?
And any refund from EF comes back through the school and then to you.
October this year or October next?
It's this October, so yeah. The 21st, which is 18 days away, and then you have till the 31st, which is the end of the month. But we'll be sending the check in before then, But if somebody did cancel, we would just tell the don't cancel this person, and they would send us back that part of the money. The other part won't get sent till December, so if you need to say, hey, I want to pay that later, you can. It's just I don't want to be chasing down 30 people trying to look for this payment in 2 months. So, we're looking at it that way. If you look at EF's cancellation policy on here, 130 days or more before departure, which would be late 2017 anyways, into certainly well into the school year. So if next school year, if something happened, we've had people move or something like that, move out of province, something happens, you can cancel. So it says cancellation with replacement. If we can find another student to replace your student, it says there's a $200 cancellation fee. EF has said they will waive that. So you would be out the $199. We would just find another student to take your place, and you'd get back anything else that you had paid to that point.
So what you should do is, because I always have my plan trips 2 years in advance as well, and so I'll tell all the kids at my meeting, if you have to cancel for whatever reason, don't cancel, talk to him first, okay? Because if he can find you a replacement, you get back more of your money.
Actually, his kids can cancel, you can't. You have to
Yeah.
do it through me.
Yeah.
So you would just let me know, and then I would just say, what do you want to do? Because I can get you the refund tomorrow, but you're going to lose the $200 cancellation fee, or we can wait and see if we get a replacement. Okay, and I'll know all the timings and that. I'll just check with you to make sure we maximize whatever money is due back to you. And then as you see, 125 to 99 days before departure as we get really close. And then at some point, 30 days or less before departure, it's like there's no more replacements, there's no refund at that point. And that's where insurance would kick in. If it was a medical issue, you'd be looking at pretty much full coverage. And if it was the CBE canceling it, then we would deal with that next September when we find out what their insurance coverage is and what insurance we decide to take if we decide to supplement board insurance at that point. The rest of the rest of the balance due, which we would know based on the numbers, but right now would be no more than 4,100. The rest of that balance due will be due in November of 2017. So basically, next school year is about 13 months from now. That's just pay off the balance, and then that money goes to EF, and then pretty much done money-wise. Where we go from there. Any questions on or concerns?
When you take these checks or credit cards or whatever it is by October 21st, and you cash that right away, we've had experience in the past with previous schools where they actually come on for checks for months.
So, okay, you have 3 options to pay. I was talking to the business manager today. How do you want to do this? Option number 1, write a check. They're likely going to cash that fairly quickly. Option number 2, come into the business office in person. You can pay by credit card. Okay, then you get your points or whatever. And that's what I would do. Option number 3, I could take all your names. What we'll do is create a class online. You can pay online. Some of you may have paid your school fees online. So just through the CBE website. I've never done that because I don't pay the fees, but through like the Henry Wiseman website or something, this thing pay fees. And then we would set up a class, register the kids in the class, and then you'd be able to pay that way. I can have that set up by next week. So anybody who wants to pay by credit card online, not a problem, we can get that set up by next week. All I would need is just, if you're interested, the enrollment form itself, if the kids bring me the enrollment form, let's say by the end of the week, then I will get them enrolled. Okay? Now it's no obligation, right? So if you bring me the enrollment form, I'll get you enrolled, we'll have it set it up online, and then you can pay. If you don't pay by October the 21st, just ask, are you still interested? And otherwise, we'll just unenroll you from the class at that point.
Other questions?
So if I get these forms by the end of the week, I'll get the name of the business office by Monday, and I can't talk to them, but let's say by Wednesday of next week.
For the
later tonight. I got to upload the video. Okay, yeah, no
Oh, I get
problem.
that.
As far as the form goes, it's the name on the passport, and if they don't have a passport, then basically your birth certificate name.
Now, something with that though, guys, make sure whatever your passport says, it matches completely, and I mean to the letter. Because if it doesn't, you guys know airlines, they're going to charge you a $300 change fee for that. Okay? So make sure whatever your name says on your passport, on your birth certificate, whatever, that's what it's going to say on the EF document. Question there? So, where are you from? Okay, so you'll probably need a Schengen visa. So you can still use a Mexican passport. No, that's fine. Okay, Mexican passport. But if you're not from Canada, you'll probably need a Schengen visa, which is easy to get. Okay? And at later meetings, I can help you figure that out. Okay, it's not hard. I've had lots of kids, because I have international students from Taipei and wherever else, and they're coming with our trips too, and I have to get them Schengens. It's not a big deal. Okay? Sorry? Typically speaking, so we do this meeting now. Sometimes Mr. Yanover has like ones just for the kids, like in school, and then I come back sort of in springtime again, and then in the fall again, and then about a week before. So typically I'm here for about 4 meetings, like sort of formal meetings like this. Okay? And so that just gives you a rough outline. What we want to do at the next meeting, we talk about where people are on the trip. We talk about maybe some optional things you might want to consider, as far as things you can, also some other things, even though you've got a pretty packed trip. Here's some things you might want to do if you're in the area. Here's how much it's going to cost.
Like we didn't book the Last Supper, and we couldn't get in.
Right.
Because all the tickets were sold. We did get in to see David, because you could get tickets for that ahead, but for the Last Supper, if we'd have booked it at the time we booked, it would have been no problem. But we were too close, and it's like all the tour companies buy them up, and then they resell them first.
So like an example is, when you hit Barcelona, for example, there's a couple things that are optionals. One is, I always take my kids are going to go to you've ever heard of Salvador Dali? He's the guy who was a painter he was a surrealist. Have you ever seen the melting timepiece thing? That's Dali. And he has a museum that is unlike anything else in the world. It is absolutely bizarre. Like you'll see a piece I've had that's 50-foot lifts. Okay? It's so whacked, it's not even funny. This guy was on many, many drugs, I think. But having said that, it's a cool place to go. So there's things we can do, and we just offer them up to the group and say, okay, in this town you have this much time. What do you guys want to do? There's this option, or you could do, there's a factory outlet mall, that option. There's this, whatever. Yeah, exactly. You shook your head, I shook my head. But sometimes it works depending on your itinerary, right? You might stop for an hour or something. But there's many things in certain cities that you can do extra, okay? And so again, you guys would have complete control of that. When we go to London, we always go to musicals, right? But we book that ourselves, okay? And so 85 people go to Mamma Mia in London. You guys are hitting Spain, so there's certain things they can do. A flamenco evening, you guys are in Granada, yeah? Like EF, I think offers it maybe in Barcelona. It sucks. You go to the one in Granada, and it's flamenco, and it's like you're in this.
It's in the itinerary.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it's.
Now, where though? Where? Barcelona or not? Because I want you to change it to the
I don't know. I think it might be in there.
If it's in your itinerary,
The itinerary, by the way, has not yet been approved by CB. So
Yeah.
this is, pretty much, but it has yet to be totally approved. Okay, so just it's always subject to change, no matter what. So that should be like the first and last lines on here, but not quite, but subject to change. When will they do the final approval? I would probably January of 2018.
yeah.
You might.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the, yeah. It's how they roll.
A Star Chamber.
But
They've been pretty good, honestly. Like I said, I worked with boards across Alberta. CBE has actually gotten way more progressive. 10 years ago, they wouldn't even travel at all, right? At all. No school trips. And now, ironically, like I said, they're actually more progressive. And I know two of the superintendents at the Catholic board, personally, and they're pro-travel people, and yet they are more restrictive right now than CBE. I'm kind of going, okay. So it just depends on the time and place. Right?
Yeah, I'd say it's changed. They're more helpful now. It used to be more the Inquisition, right? Yeah, we're going to Spain, but really. But now they're just more, just have you thought of that? Make sure that you've done this.
And that's why
stuff
they're
like that.
comfortable with EF, right? Because it's the same product. So in other words, there's lots of CBE schools going. They're all using EF because they know exactly what they're getting and they feel comfortable with that. Okay.
Last year was Centennial, Scarlet, and us all going to Italy, basically. And they had a parent meeting to suss out, are you still in favor of a trip going? Because this happened after the incident in France, and pretty much the parents all said, yeah, we want the trip to go. And since all three schools were in Italy, it wasn't a problem. And we all went and had a great time. And because we booked 2 years in advance, we had really good flights compared to what we had in previous years, and definitely compared to what the other schools got, I heard of. So,
But even like on your itinerary, again, if there is going to be a trouble spot, my group's going to the same sorts of places anyway. It will be in probably Barcelona, if there is. And I don't think there will be, honestly, I know. But what we do then is we can just tailor the itinerary. So instead of hitting Barcelona, you go visit smaller centers like Mijas, the white cities of Mijas along the coast, which are absolutely stunning, stunning. And so we just do things instead, right? And so it's not a deal breaker necessarily if all of a sudden something happens. And like I said, CB's been very, very good lately. And they probably look at it and go, oh, that makes sense. I'm impressed. That says a lot. They haven't impressed me a lot in the last 10 years.
yep. I've done 3 trips.
Yes, ma'am. Departure date is March 22nd.
Yeah, that's on the front of the itinerary. So they had one that says Adventure in Spain, designed by Stephen, 11 days till Thursday, March 22nd. So depending on the time the flight leaves, they may or may not miss some class that day.
The other thing is, too, again, I told you that everybody's trying to get out the exact same day, basically, right? Either March 22nd or whatever the day before Good Friday is. And so what EF sort of says is they'll say, can we get you out on the Wednesday instead? I can make your flights better, because literally I've done this. I've actually gone Calgary, Vancouver, Vancouver, Frankfurt, Frankfurt, Rome. I went backwards, right? Because they were completely full. And so, but my board's very restrictive in terms of travel days. And so I couldn't say go on the Wednesday. I had to go on the Thursday, but that's what my flights ended up being. So you might be a day off of March 22nd is what I'm telling you. So let's say you go to Wednesday, but then you'd be back on the Saturday, for example.
Previous 3 trips have all gone on time.
Yep.
Scheduled return is the Sunday, April 1st, and Monday, April 2nd is a holiday, so there is no school that day, so it works out nice. We got a day to recover.
You got another question there? Sorry, I couldn't hear that one. So only if the departure date changes, right? So if you back it up a day, if all of a sudden you have to leave on the 21st, now you'll be back on the 1st. Okay? So parents, when you're planning your vacations, make sure you're around. Pick up your child in the airport.
Or somebody.
If we're not.
I'm not going to take anybody home.
So you usually get more just because of the freight road, you only got 15-ish kids in here, right? Sorry, Chris.
What were the last trips?
We had more at this time, but let's just sort of see what happens between now and the end of the month. Because if it comes down to, I got 15, and at the end of the month, I'm not going to put a deposit in.
So in other words, if people put in a deposit, you're going to hold them until?
So, like October 31st is our day that, and we send them the check before that and say that, look, don't have the interest, we're just going to put a hold on it for now. Then we'll see what happens. They might extend to November then.
They've got it.
Because they're interested in us going, I'm interested in us going. We'll push a little more around the schools. We've got this up so people can listen to it and that. And who knows, there could be a number of people. I gave out, there were 35, 40 kids at the first meeting.
That was my next question. How many kids?
Yeah, there were about 35, I'd say. I handed her about 35 sheets, the ones that came home to announcing this.
I think last time you had about 32 go.
Numbers kind of varied. We had about 30 sign up initially before the end of October, and then started fluctuating a bit, just the odd cancellation and that, and then the stuff happened in France, and then kind of like 6. We were up to about 36, 6 pulled out. We ended up traveling with 30. Okay. But as I said, so we've quoted 25 to 29 to sort of say that's our ceiling. Okay. So that's the lowest number, really. If it came down to there were 18, I could find out the number and then I get back and say, listen, we could do it with 18. Hopefully we pick up another bunch. We got one grade 10 coming in now, so there will be grade 10s coming in September. So last year we picked up about 7 or 8 kids, but then 3 dropped out. Kind of thing. But we can pick up in September. So I'm aiming it for 25 to 29, so we do know. Yeah, we're looking at 4,100 tops. You get up to 35 prices down.
So are there restrictions on when the money would be fully refundable before October 31st, or is it just, oh, change our minds?
If you change your mind, yeah, before, so on October 31st, it's sort of like, yeah, okay, cash the check, take the deposits. Once they've done that, then you've got 199 down. So you come to me November 1st, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so after that, does there have to be, there's no, I believe, some reason?
Now, non-refundable is just real easy. It's non-refundable.
It's just a simple.
That's the 199.
That's the 199. But insurance means that you get mono the week before we go, you can't travel. That's covered under insurance. Okay, so that's not the refundable thing. It's just what does the insurance cover? And I think the USIC thing here said trip cancellation limit's 5,000. Well, at most we're 4,100. So you're under the trip cancellation limit thing in the travel insurance. So most travel insurance.
Okay, so up to October 31st, it's fully refundable.
Yeah.
After up to 130 days before departure, you just lose the 199.
You'd lose the 199. If we could find a replacement, without a replacement, it could be 400. So if you look in here, standard cancellation without a replacement. Okay, so you could be looking at $400 cancellation fee.
Plus the 199.
Plus the 199. Yeah. Yeah, any insurance, as I said, the CB insurance is due 45 days before, so that's not a problem because you wouldn't have paid that in. Prior to this, we've taken out insurance right at the beginning, and that was also non-refundable. So that won't happen this time because of the CBE policy, but we'll be collecting that just as part of the total. We'll remit that to them the 45 days before. Okay, and we would meet next fall to see what their coverage is, and then you could decide what you want to do if you want supplemental insurance, and I'll look into that. I've looked into it a bit now, and it's a minimum of 5 students, and it was around $85. That's your bet against 2,000 and what's going to happen in Spain. I'm hoping they'll come up with a full refund.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how many adults to student ratio are the adults?
So the adults are all teachers. So there's myself. There'll be likely 5 of us. If we get a whole pile, if we're up into the 40 some odd kids, then it might be 6.
It's basically 1 to 6. So 1 teacher for every 6 students.
Okay, that makes sense.
When you're filling this in, date of birth, they actually put it on this time. It's MMDDYY because it wasn't on there before, and so it's like 0307. Okay, what's that? Right. So I mean, if you want to write March 31st, that's fine. You can write that. You don't need to fill in the school stuff here because this form is just for internal use only. Basically, I transferred it into a spreadsheet, send the info to them. Important thing is the spelling of the name, and we will verify that like next November. Okay, because December kind of locks in the tickets, and when the tickets are locked in with the spelling, then it's tough to change. But I'll verify with you, because what we'll do is we'll get a photocopy of your passport, the student passport. We'll compare it with the information we have. Sometimes siblings' birth dates end up in there. That happens. I put an H on a Hannah that shouldn't have been there. That happened. We got that fixed though. So. But those changes we can make prior to December. Okay, so any spelling mistakes, anything like Okay, any other questions? All right, so we're looking at 1,119 due. And what I'm going to do is get rid of that.
The other thing I'd say, if Steve's working on this, is my kids hate me for it when I tell them, but I say, if you can have your child pay for some of this trip themselves. I don't care if it's tip money, I don't care if it's spending money. Honestly, I've taken well over 1,000 kids to Europe, and I can honestly say the kids who appreciate it the most are the kids who have actually put in a little bit themselves, truly. Okay, the kid who took 4,000 euros didn't pay for a dime herself, okay, and it showed. Okay, she had no regard for money, had no regard for where it came from. Okay, and so what I'm suggesting is that kids do pay for some of this themselves. Okay,
And they have a couple.
sorry kids, but there you go.
They have at least one summer and some time before the trip. And we've had quite a number of kids pay for the entire trip themselves that have gone through here just through working their part-time jobs and whatever. So
Minimum wage went up?
yeah,
Fall
right,
for it?
minimum wage went up. Oh, I can't put that up.
Oh.
Let's see, can we?
Yeah, just plug it in.
Okay.
Check that out. Nope, just do this.
Okay. Let's plug this in and see what happens. So I run this thing with my classes. It's Mind, and it's just a way. It's sort of text-based message, but I don't know your number and you don't know my number. So what happens is if you send a text to that number, 780-666-7169, and the text you want to send, the actual message, is at HWW Spain, then you'll join my group. And then I can send you a message. So all I would do is send a text. You just get a text message. So you can either text it now, or you can just take a picture of that. That's just a way that I can connect with you without having to enter 50 email addresses and stuff. And we use this all the way through the trip. So when the kids were in Italy, I would just use Remind. I would send a picture. You know, here we are waiting in line for whatever. But you know, look, you can see all your kids. You know, they're all still here. And they're looking pretty decent, you know, so here we go. So people are doing it. Yeah. So if somebody in the family joins, be it a kid or a parent, then I will send them, spam you with a million things, right? I'll just say, hey, the lists are up, you know, so, you know, if you want your kid's name on the list, then there it is. If anybody doesn't want that stuff to appear, because it'll be on the YouTube video, which I'm going to keep private anyway, so it'll just be for people I send the link.
Any other questions? How do we do on time? Look at that, I said an hour. It's 8:01. I think we did pretty well. All right, well, thank you guys, appreciate it. If you have any questions you want to come up, please feel free to talk to me or Steve. And for those of you who are